Welcome, everybody, to English Teacher Island. This is a podcast by English teachers for English teachers about teaching and things that are important to English teachers. So today, Aeryn has some questions for us. We didn't think that she talked enough last time. We didn't think that she had enough of a voice in our podcast. So we wanted to give her a little bit more voice in this one. So she's got questions for each of us. Aeryn's going to ask a question of one of us, and then they are going to respond, and then whoever else wasn't asked the question will add whatever they're going to add, and then Aeryn can move on to the next question. Does that sound like a good format for everybody?
Sounds good.
All right, Aeryn, go ahead and kick us off then.
Okay, so my first question is for everybody, but I think David, you had an answer like drafted or like ready to go. So my question is, if you had to come up with a word or phrase to describe your approach to teaching, what would it be? And then the why, justify it.
Like, I refer to the classroom as my house. I refer to the students as my children. At both Creston and Kenway Hills, they call me father. And um, when I talk about we take care of each other, it is in that kind of family thinking. And everything I do, from the of how I place the chairs in that classroom to what I am teaching, to how I am teaching it, and why I'm teaching it, is to build that community.
Mm.
And I am intentional in those ways. And this is why we see these students. My earliest students are in their mid to late 40s now, and they still weekly or bi-weekly I'll get a message from someone just asking how I'm doing, or they want to have advice because they're like putting money away for 401(b) or something like that. And so it's like, so we have this opportunity to have long relationships with them because of social media now, but also when I see them in the neighborhood, it's always all hugs.
Oh, that's really sweet, actually. One of my favorite teachers in high school was my econ teacher, believe it or not. I cannot stand math at all, but I loved this teacher because he called himself brother. He wanted everyone to call him brother, and he referred to he either called you friend or brother or sister exclusively. And like he would use your name only in like the most dire circumstances or if you were like really in trouble. Yeah, it was just very like that community in the classroom was so present all the time, and I don't know, it made me enjoy being there even if I didn't like what we were doing.
Yeah, Aeryn, one of the phenomena that are floating around here is when I am around town with David. Um, it's kind of a contest to see who runs into somebody first because I've got a lifetime worth of classmates and former students that I have surrounding me in the West Michigan area, and David's got the same. He's got a little bit of an advantage when he's downtown because that's essentially where his students are from. But yeah, it's interesting to see how they do treat David like father. He is their family, and David is very good on going to open houses in the spring too. He's well fed and well loved in the spring. I know that for sure.
You're having all the pulled pork you can eat.
Yeah, exactly.
Believe
Okay, well that's a great word. Does anyone have like a different word or they want to add to that? That's
Um,
open to either of you.
yes, I always looked at the teaching as more of an art or a skilled trade. You get your hands dirty a little bit. There are different techniques depending on what you need to teach and what the problems are that come up, and just kind of the ways that you deal with it. And you start off very much being an apprentice, and then a journeyman, and then hopefully, by the time you hit the decades career, that you become a master at your craft. But it's more, I always thought of it as more of a craft
Mhm.
than anything else.
I could not agree more. And actually, I want to hear your response, Roy. However, thinking about what you said, David, I think we've been told as educators that there has to be a distance between ourselves and our students, right? So like if we give too much, if we care too much, then we enter that burnout zone very, very quickly. And because it just weighs on you, right? All of the problems that you can't fix that are outside the classroom weigh on you in the classroom. And if you have that close relationship, one, it's going to weigh on you. Two, you can get taken advantage of, right, by the kids or by the families or by admin or other teachers or whoever else, right? So we can talk about that with my second question, but this is me putting a pin in it.
Yeah, and Aaron, I'm gonna address that first before you ask the question.
Mhm.
As far as the separation and the division, we will answer that in the second one. But I think that one of the things that is inherent in an idea like family or being a craftsman or a master of your craft, I would say probably my contribution to the words that we're using would be to use plural with your first person pronouns. We, our, ours instead of I, me, my,
Mhm.
or definitely instead of you and you guys and yours. Using inclusive pronouns definitely will change how you think about your students. When you're thinking about we instead of I and you, that changes how you think about your classroom. So that's my contribution to the first question. So go ahead
Yeah,
and ask the second one if you will.
I'm going to add to that. I was actually
Okay,
making a
yeah.
slideshow today. I was lesson planning the next unit we're doing, and I was going, we will do this, and then we will make corrections. We will go over it as a class, and then our answers we will share out. And,
Mhm.
and so subconsciously, I'm glad I'm on that level. We're there.
Good.
So then my second question I've alluded to at this point, but my second question is about burnout because I know that teaching is one of those professions that to be a good teacher and to be like a truly effective teacher, you have to lead with care, right? And that's care for yourself and it's care for the students learning and it's care for the students like as individual people. And then there's so many more places you can pour your heart into, but that's like the core tenets of it. But in doing so, with such a demanding job, like of our social skills, our emotional skills, it leads to very, very high rates of burnout, like cognitive overload. And I'm feeling it already, and I haven't even started in the classroom. And so this is a plead for advice, and then also I don't know, an open forum to, I guess, talk about how you guys manage your own burnout. Because I know it ebbs and it flows. So,
Well, Aaron, I would say my first thought on that is you need to take care of what you need to take care of in priority order. Um, and your students are important and their well-being is important, but it's kind of a put your mask on before you try to put somebody else's on. You got to take care of yourself in order to be the best for your students. How you do that is really an individual answer. For me, it was I keep school at school and home at home. And, I got in the habit of giving my papers a ride home and then giving them a ride back to school. And that didn't work for me. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to do school until everything's done or it can be done tomorrow. And once that's done, I go home. And when I'm home, I'm home. And I think that was much better in the long run for me personally. I think my family appreciated that because other than times when it was still heavy on my mind, I didn't bring my work home, other than, obviously you're bringing it home between your ears. But, and so it did mean I was later some nights. It did mean that I was earlier some mornings. But it also meant that I didn't have work hanging over my head while I was at home. And I think that's the thing, that's the part of work that bugged me when it came home with me was the paperwork and the, I have to do this and the to-do list. I can manage the emotional stuff with my students. I can imagine, I can process that sort of stuff out. I can't process unfinished work. So I just made sure that my to-do list was done when I left every day, and I made sure that the stuff that bugged me afterward, I either compartmentalized it or I, did a whole bunch of practice conversations until it got out of my head.
That's great advice, actually. And I'm taking your advice because you've said this in class actually before. I remember this. I had a whole bunch of work to do, and I'm not going to be in school on Thursday and Friday because, I'm attending PDs and, getting in the theory and, being a professional. So I'm not going to be there. And I knew that I needed to work on some sideshows. I needed to talk with my mentor teacher. I needed to plan ahead for this next unit. So I stayed until I was comfortable with the work that was done, and then I went home. And now that I'm talking with you guys, I feel so much better about the rest of my night instead of, man, I have like 3 hours of work that I need to do after we're done talking today. And I don't. I have probably like an hour of work, which is
And
much
Aeryn,
better.
as a lifelong procrastinator, that's the cost that you have of putting a task off is sure you're not doing it. And, as a lifetime procrastinator, one of the reasons why I've gotten away with it is I'm really good at work when I get down to it. And so I know when I have to really get down to it. So I haven't been burnt by it before, or at least not that badly. And so that's easy to get into that habit. But you have that cognitive load that you still have on your mind when you go home and there's still stuff to do. So yeah, and is it guaranteed to help you avoid burnout? No, because burnout comes from 17 different directions and it's just managing all of the different chaos that helps.
Mm-hmm. Okay, open floor as well to add on, to take away from, hopefully not, but to provide new insight.
Kevin, you want to speak first, and then I'll add.
Well, burnout's tough because it's different for everybody, right? The the first 5 years are really hard, right? That's kind of where you're figuring out what to do. I think if you can make it through those first 5 years, you'll be in pretty good shape. Things that I felt unprepared for in the teaching profession were things like meetings, staff meetings, and department meetings, and meetings just to have meetings, and professional development. And some of those can be very helpful. Like you learn some new things, you learn some new techniques, you meet some new people, and that's a wonderful thing. But a lot of it is, oh, it's every other Tuesday, so we're going to stay an extra 45 minutes after work just because that's what it says in the contract.
We did that today.
Yeah, it gets a little tedious after a while. I don't know what to do about that other than sit by your friends and dick around. It's a really good way to get through meetings. I think Roy makes or made, I should say this because I don't work with Roy anymore, haikus out of things the administrators would say. They're pretty good. You should ask him.
That's how I kept focus in the meetings is by writing my notes in haiku, because that's how I kept my focus. Otherwise, I would be the one dicking around in the meeting, right?
Yeah,
probably sitting next to you.
Yeah, we had a good time. We got through a lot of meetings, but there's important information there. You got to kind of discern between what you think is valuable, how that applies to your art or craft in the classroom. As far as the relationships with the students, there's not a lot I can do about feeding them or sheltering them or clothing them, but I can sure take care of them when they're in my classroom, right? For those 55 minutes. I try. I'm not always successful, but I try. And as far as making the school better or helping the school be a better place, again, there's only so much you can do. And then about the time that things are getting good, you'll get a new boss, and then you got to break that new boss in, and that's a really challenging thing. I think I counted once. I think I've had like 9 different principals in my career. I don't know, David. What about you? Can you count on your? Yeah,
every year.
Yeah. So that gets a little challenging as far as burnout goes. But I would say, hang out with your family, hang out with your friends, and I personally like to go to concerts and see live music and and boogie down. And that's kind of how I get my yayas out.
There was a lot of slang in that I am glad. I'm like, yes, I get it. We're gonna boogie down.
Yeah.
David, I want to hear from you as well. And then it kind of pops into my head about something that I've been talking about with my female teacher friends, about how they deal with burnout, which I guess that's why I'm here, right? I'm the younger female voice, so I want to say that too. But David, I want to hear you first.
So, I carry weight because when I was in my 20s, I had no concept of how to separate family from school. And I carried them with me. I lived in the neighborhood with them. So even if Dad and I would go walk in the neighborhood, we were seeing parents who were asking us questions. There was no break from it. And and we were taking care of my grandmother and my uncle. And so I was doing caregiving of students and caregiving of family. And um I remember in my late 20s coming home and saying to my mother, I won't marry because the children fulfill all of that in me and I don't have any other time for anything else and I've stayed single. And so understand that that was a choice I've made consciously. Um, where I have drawn my strength is between my own family, the emotional support from my own family, the emotional support from our church family. And so Um, I will work from sun up to sundown, Monday through Saturday. Sunday I give to those people who breathe life back into me. They don't know how important they have been to me. And when we talk about like the separation then nowadays of like between the students and I, because I'm deeply emotionally and spiritually invested in them. But like Roy and like Kevin are saying is this. My work is my work, and I'm as much of an overachiever and pleaser perfectionist I am, I can leave something there and it will still be there for the next day. And I had to teach myself that because I was the one who would stay up to 11:30 at night trying to perfect something, be wide awake at 3:13 a.m., perfecting something that I didn't perfect at 11:30 p.m. And then because they have to have the best of you every single God blessed day, you know? And there's times, this is what I've learned from my friends here, is that there's times I go in there, okay, I'm blessed tired today, and you're gonna get maybe 80% of me, and that's the best I got to give you, and I give you permission the same, my dears. So when they come in and they got to put their head down, I think, okay, I can't because I got to teach you, but I understand it, and we're just going to let that be today.
Mm-hmm.
It has been an extremely hard lesson.
Yeah, and I'm happy I'm hearing this from so many people now because I am the exact same way. Last semester, I stayed up, I cannot even tell you how many nights until midnight, 1 in the morning, working on my lesson plans, trying to perfect it. Like getting this idea that, well, if I work hard enough, I work for 30 more minutes, I think it'll be good, or an hour more and it'll be good. And then I would wake up at 4 instead of like my normal 6 o'clock because I was so stressed about it. I woke myself up and I'm like, well, I'm up already, might as well do some more work, right? Where I care so deeply because I agree with you, David. I got to show up for my kids. They deserve 110% of me, right? Because if they're having a 20% day, then I got to show up for them, right? And I always got to show up for them. But I'm learning now that I do need to take that step back. I got to schedule that time to be Aeryn and not Miss Hart. Like I got to take that time to be me. And if that means it's every Wednesday night or every Sunday, or it's during lunch, I close my classroom door and I sit there and I breathe or I read. Maybe that's what that is. But yeah, I message abundance and it is being heard.
And Aeryn, something I want to add, something I like to add, Aeryn, sometimes people equate the amount of time that you put into something as the level of quality that's going to come out. And what I have found is there's a point where I've reached the point where it's going to be as good as it's going to be. And perfect is, I don't know about you guys, but I haven't reached perfect yet, and I don't expect to. So perfect is not something that's going to happen. So there's a balance. There's a, is more time on this going to, pay off in quality? And it took a while for me to learn that one too. I think really I didn't truly learn it until coaching wasn't there for me anymore, because I put so much of my time into my teaching and coaching when I was doing them both. Kevin can bear witness to that. I was literally the first one there and the last one to leave, because I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything to the best of my ability, and sometimes that's out of your control.
Yeah. And I have a question, Aeryn and David. If you're shooting for perfection, which is fine, what happens when you have a student that interrupts you, or like you get interrupted 3 or 4 times during your lesson, like you're going to, because that's school, or if a student says something brilliant and you got to pivot and go the other way? What I mean, if you plan so thoroughly, what how do you deal with those changes, good and bad, or interruptions?
I want to answer this one first, and then maybe David, you can like supplement it with your more experience than I have. But for me, perfect isn't like perfectly packaged can be, presented anytime, repeatable. Like that's not perfect. Perfect is meaning that I'm comfortable with the level of effort that went into this. I did the work to find the student misconceptions, where the flaws in the practice might be, where it might not be the most effective. And then when I'm in the classroom, perfect looks like being able to pivot. So a perfect lesson is changeable for me. It goes off of what the students need. So a first hour, a perfect lesson for them is not the same as it's going to be for fourth hour. So when I mean perfect, that the amount of time I put into it, like a lesson, is me trying to adapt it to all my different students, because I want to know them so well and I want to show up for them the way that they need me to. Which again, I agree with you, Roy. It's not ever going to be perfect. Perfect is not attainable, which is something that I've learned.
It's a good target though.
Close to perfect. Shoot for, what is it? Shoot for the moon, end up in the stars. Yeah.
Agreed. Perfect to me meant that that they could look at that. Perfect to me meant that any of y'all could walk in my room and you would think that that was done effortlessly, because I had put in the time and the reflection to have it look like that. And in my 20s, I was awful, because I used to time within the hour, like this should take 10 and that should take 12, and then add them up. And then and if you'd seen me in my 20s and trying to micromanage all that, oh Lord Jesus, have mercy. By the time I got in my late 20s and in my 30s and 40s, it was just that, oh my goodness gracious. First hour, third, and sixth are not going to ever look the same, because it's a different family. And you can come in there and you can see I could have something planned for 3 hours, and it's only gonna be a 50-minute session, but I'm gonna listen to their needs and be in tune with them, so that, well, we may not get to this. And so when I say now, which I was able to articulate now, that I wasn't, but what is true of my behaviors, if you'd seen me in my 30s and 40s, is I teach the children. I don't cover the material. I teach the children. And they do the lead of where that conversation or where that lesson is going to go.
Yeah, with some minor redirection on your part as they go.
Yeah, when they want to ask you, like today, because they want to get me off topic, what's your best student? I said, oh, for goodness sakes, we've got work to get done, dear heart.
Yeah, I've had that question many times. Many a personal question, like, "Hey, you have a worksheet in front of you. Let's get to that. How about we put our name on the paper here?" Okay, so back to, I'm surprised I remember this. Usually I have an idea and then it's gone. I remember it actually. So my idea from earlier, that I've been talking about burnout with my female friends. So a lot of the teachers that I have been at Grand Valley with are female teachers, especially the English department, right? A lot of us are women. And I mean, teaching is a very female dominated field for many, many, many reasons that we don't even need to get into. But one thing that I've been experiencing is that abundance of care, and then I have to go home, and then I feel like I still have to, keep up with the house. I feel like I have to be a perfect person outside. So I have to be a perfect Aeryn, and then I have to be a perfect Miss Hart. Right. And I'm learning to take that perfection out of the classroom and then, but being a person, right? And I know my mom is a parapro, and she recently became a parapro, and she goes to school and she works with elementary students, and she comes home, and then she's a laundry list of things to do after. And I've been talking with her as well, like, how do you manage it? And the collective like point that they all come back to is that there has to be a separation between the person they are at school and the person they are at home, right? And those boundaries look different for every single person, right? And some of my female teacher friends, like, their boundary is that they do not discuss things in school that happen outside of school. Like, they keep that part of themselves closed off.
Mhm.
For some of them, it's like they work the moment that bell rings, they go home because they want that division of time, right? And then whatever it is, it waits till later. And so, as I think, as a female teacher, seeing some female teachers, like both of my mentors have been female teachers, that, and then also teachers I've seen that maybe don't have the best lines, I'm learning that even more importantly, if I ever want a family in the future, right, that I need to set that boundary now and figure out what that line is.
Yeah, I think that's a wise way to think about it, Aeryn. I mean, you know, obviously we don't have the female perspective, but I know that our society expects, the same chores from women that they always have. And I think the way it's manifested itself at our house is, Emily and I were both teachers for our entire careers. Emily's retired now, but we both just kind of decided that we were going to accept a level of messiness in our house that was just fine because we've got lives and we got stuff going on. And, especially when our girls were younger and our evenings were scheduled. I mean, probably over scheduled. You throw my coaching in there because I was coaching when our daughters were young too. You just end up accepting a level of this is okay, and we're gonna call it okay for a while. And then, spring break turned into spring cleaning, and summer break turned into catching up on the travel that we wanted to do. But it's you're really hitting on the right points here, in that you have to decide that these are my guardrails, these are my boundaries. And you talked about talking about your personal life at school. I don't talk much about my personal life at school simply because, um, frankly, it's not anybody's business but mine. Um, I will tell them how I'm feeling. I will tell them how my day is going, but I'm not going to necessarily share some of the burdens that I have. I've talked with you and your cohort more about stuff that's going on in my life than I have with any of my students. But I think part of that is the nature of working with a group of student teachers for a whole year. There's a little bit a different level of
Familiarity.
familiarity with that group. So yeah, making guardrails, making borders is really a healthy way to do it from the start. So yeah, but it's different for everybody.
Yeah. I do have my other question, but I don't know how we're doing on time. We're doing okay?
I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Okay, wonderful. Then I guess this is going to be a hard pivot, right? Because we're not really on this topic right now. Thank you all for your contributions so far. But my next question, it can be answered by anybody, is about engagement. And I haven't had too much of an issue because I like to, kids have called me fun before, so they're usually pretty engaged when I'm speaking, unless it's a really like textbook boring lesson. Like if we're doing internet research all hour, they're going to be a little disengaged. Or if we're just simply sitting down and reading, they're going to be a little disengaged. However, as a rule, there are like there's a lot of disengagement in schools, especially today. And I think Kevin, you can speak a lot to this as well. That it is the kids are disengaged and nothing seems to be getting them back out of it. Like when they put their head down on the desk, sometimes that's it. That's it for the hour. The bell rings, they stand up and they
Yeah.
go. So what do we do about that?
Well, that's a great question. I think that up until about the end of January, I'll go poke them. Hey, are you okay? What can I do to help? Do you want to go get a drink? Do you want to go take a lap? About now, though, if you've decided that you don't care, and maybe this speaks to the burnout question, I don't know that I have it in me to care for myself and 138 students all year long. It's not that I don't care about them, but I can't be the one that cares about school for that kid. You know what I mean? They have to care a little bit. But as a practical technique, I will say this: put the desks in squares or put them in a group. They don't sleep when they're with each other accountable. If they're in rows and columns, they're going to disengage because they don't have anybody to talk to. They might not be talking about Shakespeare or grammar, but they'll be talking to each other. So that's a good trick that works from a practical sort of hands-on point of thing. I guess the other part is, and maybe what David was talking about, and that I actually tried last week, is have them come up with the questions. Like, why is this important? What do you think is the important part here? Why do you think that? If they're the ones asking the questions, they get a little more engaged on that. So those are just kind of two tricks. But also, I think the third trick is, this might come off sounding nonchalant, but I can't care for both of us all year long. I just don't have it in me anymore. And that's how I'm still get to be a classroom teacher, I guess. So
and the other part of that too, though, Kevin, is you've got a responsibility to the other students in the room too. And if too much of your time goes into Mr. Head Down, that takes away from that other student or those other students too.
Yeah, as a practical measure, that's that. But I mean, nobody got into the teaching profession to ignore a kid who's going to sleep all day. I mean, it's tough. And when you get to the point of this kid just won't even talk to me, you call home. You got to call home. Hey, this is what I've been seeing the last week, and I just wanted to let you know. And if you got any advice, I'd be willing to listen to it. But this is what's going on. But I do like the put them in groups. I do like the have them ask questions as two practical techniques.
Yeah. My cornerstone of that really came from, would I rather have a silent but obedient classroom, or would I have a noisy, somewhat off task sometimes, but engaged and joyful classroom? And my answer is always going to be the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah. But Aeryn, what do you think about that situation? About, when you care more about about school and about success than the student does. I know that sometimes it's hard to separate your own effort from that student's effort. How are you dealing with that when you have a student that you're pouring a lot of energy into that student and it's not showing any it's not bearing any fruit yet?
As a very novice teacher, I have not yet had the student that I poured months and months of effort into and then they just give up. I have not had that yet. So as a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed novice teacher, I can say that it's going great. Every student that I have poured individual attention and effort into has made some progress and also has been usually pretty grateful for it. So, like, for example, one of my students is having a very, very hard time reading right now, like just cannot get through it. And so I brought the book home and I've been recording the sessions for him, like the section he has to read, and then he'll listen to it in class. And then I'll make sure I check in with him. And that's a way for me to use my time in class to help those other students, right? But by doing that, I'm like, wow, that's like an hour of my time and 2 hours of my time, depending on how long the section is. But he has been nothing if not grateful for that, and he has shown some like marked improvement. So that's reinforcing me putting in that extra effort, and it's validating. It makes me feel good. But at the same time, I know that there's a limit there, and I'm going to hit that limit at some point. And
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, but Aeryn, what book are you reading? What book is it that you're recording?
It's a historical fiction book called My Name Is Not Easy.
Okay, great. And if it were your classroom, you would teach that book again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the hour that you put in now, you're not going to have to put in for the next 4 years until you get a new book.
Fair.
So you got to kind of look at it like that too, right? That the work you're putting in now is work that you're putting in for your future career.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I don't have to record that stuff. I've already recorded it. I don't have to reread My Name Is Easy 50 times because I've already read it 50 times. So that's kind of part of the apprenticeship of it, is what I'm saying.
No,
Yeah.
I agree. That goes into your point that the first 5 years are harder because I'm recording,
Yeah.
spending all that extra time doing that. Yeah, sorry, bro, go ahead.
No, yeah, that's something I just mentioned to the class I just came out of is that yeah, you're working hard in your first couple years of teaching, but it's because you're building your teaching practice. You're literally building the tools that you're going to use to teach in those first 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, right? Malcolm Gladwell says 10,000 hours. That equates to about 9.5 years in the classroom, and that's just bell to bell. That's not counting all the meetings in the periphery. And Kevin, I want to echo what you said earlier. It's not the bell to bell stuff that's going to get you out of teaching. It's going to be the stuff outside of the bells that's going to be the stuff that's hardest to handle. So yeah, I mean, when you look at teaching as a profession, people think that your lesson planning means you're building it from scratch every time. And really what you're doing is you're taking what you've done in the past and you're reflecting on it. You're saying, what worked and how do I make it happen again? What didn't work and do I need to fix it or do I need to replace it? And so, yeah, that recording that you did, I was about to say the same thing, Kevin. You put an hour's worth of work in, and as long as you save that recording, you have it for the rest of forever. So the next time you need it, it's in your pocket, as long as you're organized enough to keep it in the right spot. And there's other resources available too. There's programs that can read to a student for you. There's audiobooks that are available. That I think that falls under the beg, borrow, and steal clause of teaching is that, bootleg some CDs if you need to. Audiobooks are very portable, much more portable than actual books. So, and there's Libby and there's Overdrive and things where you can get those things electronically from your library too. But yeah, it's something where, Aeryn, you're right. If you say, if you look at the list of things there are to do to build a teaching practice, no one would go into the profession. But it's also, you get to decide which parts are most important to you to support your teaching practice also. And so that recording was something that you felt was urgent and necessary. That's where you decided to put your energy. And I think that's part of it too. Where do you put your energy and where do you choose to do it later?
I want to.
And we also, well, let me just squeak in, David. We also have a profession, kind of like football coaches, teachers, and president of the United States. Everybody thinks they can do a better job, right? But they're not doing it. So, take heart. What you do is a very special thing. Go ahead, David.
I want to come back to when you were talking about female teachers, because like females, I do not compartmentalize well. So it's all there all at the same time, all at once. And that's why that neglect of myself during that time that I'm devoted to them was they were going to take preference, and they were going to take preference every single time. And then as I taught 5, 10 years, okay, I came home with papers to grade. That's going to be 1 day out of the 10 that I'm home. What I don't get done on that one is going it will be there when I get back in January and things like that. I had to, because otherwise it would have been all consuming. And so, and and the classroom had to be as neat as a pin. My house has to be as neat as a pin. So and then and like I don't have a wife, but I have a brother. So and so that part of that, and then likewise, so then um um I would in the city, my goodness gracious, there was never a dull moment, and there was not never any disengagement there. My goodness, it was banter back and forth all those 20 years at Creston. No matter, even when we talk about the better kids or worse kids, they were all better kids. I move out to Kennewa Hills, and I have a group of girls which I learned is called a resting face, but there's another word they put in between there. And and it's like, I'm not used to this. I'm used to this kind of banter. And so with my oh my god, like sometimes overwhelming personality, my humor, positive energy coming out of every pore I have, and still, and I'd say, I'd lean forward, my darlings, you're a tough crowd. And you might get a grin out of one of them. And so humor had to come in. What I was saying is humor was my way to re-engage. And um, but and it was sarcasm was never going to work with this body. I could never come with some, or smart aleckiness was never going to work with how this system worked. It was always something maybe a little dry or a little wry, but something like off the cuff like that. And like today, one of my darling ones comes into class.
Mm.
And like Kevin is telling you, I have my protocols, or like my framework for activities that work. And if you come and see me on Friday, I'm going to share some of these with you. But these protocols that work for them to immediately go into groups, to immediately have them somehow interact with each other. And then when I explain the protocol, we explain why I have chosen this protocol for this activity. And then they might see that protocol 3, 4, 5, 6 different times in the year with different whys. But the framework's the same. And because I had the framework in place, that part of me that wants to make something look effortless was because I would have to teach them that framework. And when Kevin's talking about putting them into groups, it's exactly that. Because then this face becomes something of they'll interact with each other. What we have trouble with my seniors is the phones are in their hand all the time, and the high school has the rule phone has to be away. College has you make your own decisions. Well, then I said, well, I want to treat you like you're young adults, and as young adults, you're going to have to learn how to use your social media in a way that you can still stay engaged in the learning. And we're still working on that. And it's February.
Yeah, that's a process. It's a process that is far too long.
Yeah.
I can very much relate to the humor one because I was a long-term sub for a couple months before my apprenticeship placement, and that was invaluable to me getting confidence in the classroom. And I was actually at Allendale High School. That was where my long-term sub job was. Yeah. And it was wonderful. I loved that school so much. But so many of the kids would come in head down immediately. And a few of them, they had the rapport. They came in just talking away, like their mouths did not stop moving from the moment they were in the hall to the moment they were in my room to the moment they were in their seats. It was just the whole time they were going. But for the ones that got disengaged, humor was good, and then creativity. And I actually want to talk about this next time, so I won't go too in depth. But I want to talk about like joy and play in the classroom and like how we can incorporate that. But very brief overview here is that I would use like the attendance question. It would be something like nonsensical, where if you had to live underwater or outer space for the rest of your life, what would it be? instead of saying hello or here when I do attendance, they would respond. And the ones that are having a bad day, they give me one answer. Or the ones that are having a great day, they won't stop talking. They give me, 30 seconds of an answer. Right. But it gets everyone to start speaking and then they're engaged, like that group thing, where if they're being social, then they're more likely to be engaged with the lesson.
Awesome. So, Aeryn,
That's a
sounds
good
like you
trick.
got a topic for us for next time already.
I do.
Guys, how do you feel about this format? Do you want to just roll with this next time too, and have Aeryn come up with a question for each of us, and then we fill in the blanks? Does that sound good?
Much so.
Sure. Sounds good.
All right. Hey, thank you all for your time. Thank you all, those of you who are watching, listening. This has been English Teacher Island, and thanks a bunch. Hope to see you soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.